a encantadora e hospitaleira capital de Minas Gerais.
Hi everyone. So my name's Erica Goldson, and I guess I should start off by introducing myself. Why am I so important that I should be standing on this big red circle right now? I guess the reason why I'm here is actually because I have a lot of trouble answering that. I'm not able to define myself in that way. You see, I'm a writer and a speaker and an activist. I'm a student, but at the same time, I'm a teacher. I'm a mediator, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a thinker, I'm an artist, and a musician, and a dancer. Love to dance. You know, I'm also a daughter, a sister, and a friend. But I guess the most important thing that I am, the most important reason that I'm here right now, is that I'm a dreamer. Because you see, I don't like to live my life with limitations of what I can and can't be. I prefer endless possibilities. I like to expand my own horizons by being open-minded to new experiences and insights. And I expect the same from everyone I interact with. I try to break down the barriers of belief, which is why I'm not afraid to say what's really on my mind. And that's exactly what I did. On my day of graduation from a small town high school in upstate New York, I said what I really felt. And little did I know was that it would become a viral internet sensation. Some agreed with what I had to say, and some thought I was being a bit short-sighted. But regardless, I left it open for, and I appreciated the discourse that followed. And now I'll share some of it with you, and perhaps I'll spark something.
Every subject just for the purpose of excelling and not learning. We have no choices in life when money is our motivational force. Our motivational force ought to be passion. But this is lost from the moment we step into a system that trains us rather than inspires us. Now I have successfully shown that I was the best slave. Doesn't it perturb you to learn about the idea of critical thinking? Is there really such a thing as uncritically thinking? To think is to process information in order to form an opinion. But if we are not critical when processing this information, are we really thinking? Or are we mindlessly accepting other opinions as truth? We are more than robotic bookshelves, conditioned to blurt out facts we were taught in school. We are all very special. Every human on this planet is very special. So aren't we all deserving of something better? Of using our minds for innovation rather than memorization, for creativity rather than futile activity, for rumination rather than stagnation? We are not here to get a degree to then get a job so we can consume industry-approved placation after placation. There is more and more still.
So as you can see, I didn't feel too good about myself on my day of graduation. I was first in my class, someone who had never gotten a B on a report card, and yet all that information that I had stuffed inside my head didn't make me feel prepared for the world outside of school. Unless, of course, I sought to be in the same type of setting, merely sitting in a desk, doing what I was told in order to be validated. John Dewey, who was an American reformer of education in the early 20th century, had once said that education is not preparation for life. Education is life itself. So why must we fool ourselves into believing that learning stops after you exit a classroom? I would say that's quite the limited perspective and very destructive to the advancement of mankind. But luckily, there are alternatives. You see, in traditional classrooms, normally children are thought to just become dependent on a teacher. They're fooled into believing that they must have someone to tell them what to think and how to think it. They're judged based on ability to fit a certain mold. But there are schools, such as North Star in Hadley, Massachusetts, where children can actually choose from a wide array of educational options, anything from building a computer to yoga and meditation classes. And then there's also another school that I'm very fond of, and that's called the Sudbury School. Numerous institutions from throughout the world have taken on this approach to education where there's absolutely no grade levels, there's no required curriculum, and there's no hierarchy between administration and student. Instead, progression is determined by the student himself, and personal challenges are responsible for the acquisition of knowledge. And decisions in the school are made by everyone that's present at the school meeting. Regardless, student or staff, everyone has one vote. And this is responsible for things like amendments and repeals to school rules, or management of the school's budget, or even decisions on hiring and firing. There's also a judicial system, so if there are any undesirable actions, the consequences are determined by the decisions of a jury. So what better way to treat students, to raise them to be engaged and responsible citizens, than acting as if they already are? You see, normally we have a fear of autonomy and collaboration between students. But as author Alfie Cohen tells us, we don't have to be this way, because non-cooperative approaches almost always involve duplication of effort. Since someone working independently must spend time and skills on problems that already have been encountered and overcome by someone else. A technical hitch, for example, is more likely to be solved quickly and imaginatively if scientists, including scientists from other countries, pool their talents together rather than compete against one another. So I think that maybe we don't always have to try to be better than the person next to us to become better ourselves. We already have so many problems in the world that we can work together to solve, like food shortages and tsunamis. Do we really have to cause drama amongst each other? Instead, we can work together, and in this process of working together, we can actually try to overcome personally the challenge of social interaction. Another critic of standard education that I was lucky enough to come across during my travels was Dr. Peter Gray, who's a professor of psychology at Boston College. He explained to me the value of play and how the best way to learn something is to be excited by it, and especially to be involved with it by people of varying skill levels. So let's take math, for example. It's often intimidating and dreaded in the classroom, but we can learn the concepts simply by playing a game of cards, by noticing the patterns, and by being challenged by our opponent. Other activities include cooking or handling money, and teachers can certainly try to introduce these activities into the classroom, but like Dr. Gray states, no teacher, no matter how brilliant, can get into every child's mind and come up with just the trick that will engage that mind at that exact time. That's why self-directed learning, learning in which the child is in charge, is more efficient and enduring than anything that can be taught. And to illustrate this further, Dr. Gray had asked for stories from unschooling families. Now, unschooling might be a new word for y'all, because it was a new word for me after I said that speech online. These parents of these families, they don't require a curriculum for their children, and they certainly don't send them to formalized schools. My favorite account was from an unschooling mom. Her name is Jennifer. 3 years ago, my son, at age 8, was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. Now every meal is math. We calculate total carbohydrates from nutritional labels, total carbs for a meal, carb to insulin ratios by time of day, correction factors, percentages, etc. Now he needs to know math to stay alive. He still hates memorizing times tables. If I asked him, what is 3 times 6? I just got a blank stare. Then one day at lunch, he wanted cookies, so I said, okay, if each cookie has 6 grams of carb and you're going to eat 3, how much carb is that altogether? Without even blinking, he replied, 18. But let's say someone had to learn math the traditional way in order to qualify for college admission. Well, an unschooling mom named Leslie talked to us about her son who had never learned math the formal way until he decided to apply to university. She said, the first real formal math he did was when he studied for the ACT test. When he was younger, we had math workbooks and even a couple textbooks around the house, but they barely got looked at. The dirty little secret about math is that it just doesn't take as long to learn it as we're culturally indoctrinated to believe. My son learned enough math in just a few weeks to get a 33 out of a 36 on the ACT test just by studying some ACT test prep books. So you see, the traditional method of schooling actually relies on the assumption that children don't have this innate ability to learn on their own. Yet clearly, from the moment that they're born, they naturally soak up the language that best serves them. And if they don't know something, they use this language to ask questions to try to figure out the answer. So it's merely up to the teacher to be present at that moment to answer the query. Or better yet, to introduce the student to a personal system of discovery, such as a computer or a library. And I would hope that adults, I would hope that all of you could utilize this manner of learning as well. But it seems that oftentimes we're ashamed of not knowing something. But there's only shame and ignorance if it's not addressed. I have to stress that learning is lifelong, no matter what age. So we can all be students, and we can all be teachers in every situation we find ourselves in. So let's be a little bit more open-minded. Let's get out of this one-track tunnel that has been placed before us by every single person who has ever raised us, and let's start using our peripheral vision to notice that there are other avenues. First, we have to do a little exploration. We have to interact with others. We have to make mistakes. And through this process, we can learn what's really valuable to us, what's really worth doing in this lifetime. And take note that it's different for every single human being, which is why no one can tell you what success is. You have to decide it on your own. So maybe now you're wondering, how have I incorporated this philosophy into my own life? Well, I guess I do my best to not make plans. When someone asks me the common question of, what do you picture yourself doing in 10 years? I'm challenged. I have no idea, because they're asking me to draw a conclusion based on past information, but there's a huge variable in the imagined prospect. And that's 10 years of new experiences. I just turned 20, so I don't think when I was 10 years old, I thought I would be here standing in Belo Horizonte, Brazil, talking about education reform. I didn't even know Belo Horizonte existed until September when I was invited here. And you know what I was doing in September? I was working on a face painting business in upstate New York. But what I did was I packed up all those supplies and I shoved them into my mom's closet, and I said, Mom, I'm going to Guatemala, I'm going to Brazil, I'm going to Peru. She was a little worried. But you see, we just have to follow our dreams. We have to do what we really want to do. And I couldn't just let this opportunity go to waste. I was getting a complimentary plane ride to and from anywhere in the world. And, you know, I had yet to gain fluency in Spanish, so I thought, well, in Latin America, why not? So I landed myself in San Pedro La Laguna, Guatemala, and I thought I would just be there for a couple months, taking some Spanish lessons, living with a host family. But even when we try to imagine the upcoming months, There are always surprises as long as we're open to them. You see, I allowed myself to be immersed in the culture, and I allowed myself to see how the economy functions and how I could play a part in that. People approached me wanting to learn English because the economy was so dependent on international tourism. I became a volunteer English teacher. And now instead of going to Peru, I'm just going to go back to the place that I fell in love with, the place that has the Western standards that I find imperative for my life, but at the same time utilizes a traditional Mayan culture that I'm so fond of. So you see, no, I don't have a degree in education. I don't have a degree in business administration, but I'm going to open up an English school in San Pedro La Laguna because what I do have is an attitude for development. I know that I'll be developing alongside of my students. And that, coupled with the internet, of course, anything is possible. When I have a goal, I know that I can meet it and exceed it, because every goal is really just a stepping stone to a new goal. It's never ending. So I guess I'll close by saying that anything is possible. When you take that first step, when you do what you really want to do, you can be creative and you can learn what you really need to know. That's what we're all here for. So I hope to see you outside of the classroom, learning, seeking something more out of life, and also teaching a little bit along your way. Thank you.